like Shedeur. I like the swag he brings, the confidence he plays with. You know what I'm saying? Deshaun's a little bit more quieter, but he's still a baller. You know, we can't erase what he's done in the past in this league either. So
That's a fact.
I think I think I think it's gonna.
All right, it looks like Cleveland Browns defensive lineman Malik Collins had some very, very strong things to say about Shedeur Sanders in this quarterback situation for the Browns. This is making waves all over the internet.
Something is not adding up in Cleveland, and Malik Collins just made that crystal clear. While headlines keep pushing one story about the quarterback situation, Collins stepped in and basically flipped the whole narrative on its head. Inside the locker room, things are not nearly as settled as people are being told, and that should have every fan paying attention right now. Collins didn't come out screaming or calling anyone out directly, but the message was loud anyway. When asked about the quarterback battle, he didn't name a leader, didn't hint at anyone pulling ahead, and didn't back up the idea that this race is already decided. Instead, he doubled down on one key point. This is still an open competition and nobody has locked anything up yet. That alone completely clashes with what's been circulating in the media lately. Because if you've been following the coverage, you've probably heard that Deshaun Watson is somehow leading this race. That narrative started gaining traction fast, even though it's built on very little real football action. We're talking about off-season sessions, limited reps, and situations that barely resemble real NFL competition. Yet somehow,
who said he had spent time with Monken earlier in the offseason, was asked if he had any thoughts regarding the quarterback competition. He initially played coy. He said, "I don't have any. I think the main thing is they're both good dudes. I've seen the type of player Deshaun is. I've seen how dynamic he's been in the past. I think he has a lot to prove. I think Shedeur, he's super talented. I think he also has a lot to prove going forward. I think they said it was going to be an open competition, so may the best man win." Malik Collins just hinted Browns competition isn't what it seems. It says it's important to note that the veterans have also been told that this would be an open competition. If Browns ownership thinks fans are the only ones wary about the latest Watson developments, they're mistaken. The very players who make up the team might have something to say if they believe Monken has been disingenuous. These are the kinds of cracks in the foundation that could doom yet another head coaching tenure in Cleveland. Okay, so you got defensive lineman Malik Collins letting it be known that's not true.
that turned into Watson is ahead, and fans weren't exactly buying it. And that's where Collins' reaction hits different. This is not a random opinion. This is coming from inside the team, from a veteran who sees how things are actually unfolding day to day. When he says both quarterbacks have a lot to prove, that tells you everything you need to know. There is no clear separation, no dominant performance forcing a decision, and definitely no reason to crown a starter this early. Now let's talk about the other side of this battle, because Shedeur Sanders is not just quietly sitting in the background. If anything, his presence is becoming impossible to ignore. There's a growing belief among fans that he might actually be showing more upside right now, more energy, and more momentum heading into training camp. It's not official, it's not confirmed, but the feeling is there, and it's getting stronger. That's part of why this situation feels so tense. On one hand, you've got a veteran in Watson who has experience and expectations tied to him. On the other, you've got Sanders bringing fresh energy and the kind of spark that fans are clearly connecting with. And when Collins says both guys still have to prove themselves, it reinforces the idea that this is a real fight, not just a formality. But here's where things start to get even more interesting, because the disconnect between media reports and player perspective is raising serious questions. Why is there such a strong push to frame Watson as the leader if the locker room isn't backing that up? Why are fans hearing one thing publicly, while players are hinting at something completely different? That's the kind of gap that can create real tension inside an organization. If players start to feel like decisions are being influenced by something other than performance, that can affect trust, chemistry, and the overall direction of the team. Collins didn't say that directly, but the way he framed the situation makes it hard to ignore that possibility. And fans are picking up on it fast. There's already a sense that people are more excited about what Sanders could bring, especially if he continues to look sharp when the competition ramps up. The idea of a new direction, a new identity at quarterback is something a lot of supporters are ready to embrace. Still, nothing is decided yet. And that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. No matter how many headlines try to lock in a storyline, the reality inside the building is still unfolding.
So you say even if Deshaun Watson is healthy, it's Shedeur for sure for you?
For me, Shedeur is the quarterback that we all seen the potential for him to be. He just adds so many other kids want to come and see him play.
He creates an excitement.
An excitement throughout the stadium, throughout the sponsorship, throughout the people that's tailgating. He has that charisma. By the way, He stayed there all off season long, which shows his seriousness, even having a new coach coming in. He's there. I just think that he's so intrinsic when it comes to everything you want as a franchise. I think Shedeur's
Training camp is going to be the real test, where reps matter, pressure builds, and performance finally speaks louder than speculation. Right now, the only thing that feels certain is uncertainty. Collins made sure of that with just a few measured words that carried a lot more weight than people expected. This quarterback battle is alive, unpredictable, and far from over. And if the early signs are any indication, it might not go the way everyone thought it would. The more this situation unfolds, the more it feels like the outside narrative is racing way ahead of reality. And again, Malik Collins is the one quietly bringing things back to earth. Because while debates keep heating up online, inside the building, nobody is acting like this job is locked in. That contrast is getting harder and harder to ignore. One of the biggest issues here is how quickly people jump to conclusions about Deshaun Watson being in control of the competition. It didn't take much. A few reports, some light off-season buzz, and suddenly it became he's leading the race. But when you really break it down, what evidence is actually there? There hasn't been meaningful game speed action, no real pressure situations, and no full evaluation period yet.
So yesterday,
Yeah, go
Tyvus
ahead, Mike.
did his weekly hot take, and it was relatively, it was
Spicy?
lukewarm, we'll call it. No, it wasn't crazy. He said Austin Barber could end up being the Browns' most important pick from the draft, and it did awesome numbers on YouTube. So Tyvus, great job for giving us a headline. But I was going through my topic list, and I just keep a running topic list for show ideas. And I've had this one highlighted for right now. On February 17th, Tyvus was on the panel. We were having a discussion, something Browns related. And Bull, it was not the topic, but you had asked Tyvus, what's the potential of his team? And Tyvus goes, well, how good the quarterback is going to depend on that. So, Bull, you said, all right, so do you think Shedeur could be a top 20 quarterback next year? If he's top 20, then maybe we can get to where you go. And Tyvus said, I refuse to answer that question until after the draft. So, Tyvus, the draft has now passed. Do you believe Shedeur Sanders can be a top 20 quarterback in 2026 with all the new additions to the offensive line and the receiving room the Browns have made via free agency and the 2026 NFL draft?
I think the question should be, is he likely to be a top 20? I mean, of course there's a chance. There's a chance anybody could be.
Okay.
But do you think it's likely he'll be a top 20 quarterback?
That makes the confidence behind those claims feel shaky at best. And that's exactly why Collins' words matter so much. He didn't hype anyone up, didn't push a storyline, and didn't play into the noise. Instead, he kept it grounded. Both quarterbacks are talented. Both have shown flashes, and both still need to prove it when it counts. That kind of neutral, honest take suggests the team itself is still watching closely, still evaluating, and definitely not rushing toward a decision. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders keeps gaining quiet momentum. It's not just about highlight plays or flashy moments, it's the overall vibe around him that's starting to stand out. There's confidence, there's composure, and there's a sense that he's embracing the moment instead of being overwhelmed by it. Fans are noticing that energy, and it's starting to shift the conversation in a big way. You can feel it building, that growing belief that Sanders might actually have a real shot at taking this job if things continue trending this way. He's not being handed anything, and that's part of what makes this so compelling. Every rep, every practice, every opportunity is another chance for him to close the gap, or maybe even move ahead. At the same time, this puts even more pressure on Watson, because whether fair or not, expectations follow him everywhere. Being labeled the leader of the competition raises the stakes instantly. If he doesn't clearly separate himself once training camp begins, the questions are only going to get louder, and the support could start to shift even more toward Sanders. And again, this is where the disconnect becomes impossible to ignore. The media conversation feels almost predetermined, like it's trying to steer the outcome before the competition even plays out. But inside the locker room, based on what Collins is signaling, nobody is buying into that idea. They're preparing for a real battle, not a scripted outcome. That kind of situation can create serious tension if it keeps going. Players want clarity, but they also want fairness. If performance doesn't match the narrative being pushed publicly, it can lead to frustration. And that's something no team wants heading into a critical season. Collins may not have said it directly, but his tone makes it clear that the team expects this to be earned, not assumed. And for the fans, that uncertainty is actually fueling excitement. Because the idea that this job is still wide open means anything can happen. It keeps every practice meaningful, every report important, and every update worth watching.
I think that the Browns have done an unbelievable job, boosting up this roster. I think Zach said yesterday that they spent about $100 million on the offensive line. If you think about that, and they play to their potential because it's really a lot of boom or bust with a couple of players on that line. You think about Titus Howard and you think about Zion Johnson, those two guys in particular. Who's drinking a pop?
Sorry about
and
that.
You think about those two
I tried to be
guys
as quiet as I could. I tried
That
to be
was
as quiet as I
loud,
could
yeah.
open it. Relax.
Yeah.
Sarah's a drink.
Anyways, you think about those two guys in particular. If George Warhop can get those guys to play to their full potential, I think absolutely. I think, if Casey Concepcion is able to catch the ball, Denzel Boston becomes a good red zone threat and can catch some of the 50-50 balls, absolutely. The thing with Shedeur Sanders is something that I pointed out yesterday. Shedeur Sanders is one of those guys that skips the layups to take the go for the great. And there's nothing wrong with that. You got to make sure that person that you're going for great with, that receiver, also has greatness inside of him as well. And I think he fell victim to trusting his teammates a little bit too much, and their ability just didn't materialize. So hopefully, you need a Jerry Jeudy to turn it around. You need Denzel Boston to be able to adjust to the NFL game and be able to make those plays. You need Casey Concepcion and Isaiah Bond and those guys to all do that. I think that they've done enough that you can absolutely if he is a starting quarterback and
Especially with Sanders continuing to trend upward, there's a real sense that this story is just getting started. Training camp is going to change everything. That's where the talk stops and the competition gets real. Live reps, real pressure, real decisions. That's when we'll finally see who separates from the pack. Until then, all the speculation is just noise, no matter how loud it gets. What makes this whole situation even more intense is how quickly things could flip once real competition begins. And that's exactly what Malik Collins was hinting at without needing to say it outright. Because when a veteran like him stresses that both quarterbacks still have work to do, it tells you this battle is fragile. One strong stretch from either side could completely change everything. Right now, the spotlight is sitting heavily on Deshaun Watson, and not just because of the position he plays. There's pressure tied to expectations, past performance, and the constant noise surrounding him. When the narrative pushes you as the guy, people expect you to look like the guy immediately. And if that doesn't happen once things get competitive, the criticism is going to hit even harder. At the same time, Shedeur Sanders is stepping into a completely different kind of momentum. He's not carrying the same weight of expectation, which allows him to play more freely, more aggressively, and with nothing to lose. That's a dangerous combination in a quarterback battle, especially when fans are already starting to rally behind him. And let's be real, fans are not just watching, they're reacting fast. Every clip, every report, every small update gets dissected instantly. Lately, there's been a noticeable shift in energy, with more people getting excited about what Sanders could bring to the offense. It's that fresh spark, that unpredictable edge that's pulling attention in his direction. But here's where things get tricky, because hype can build quickly, but it can also collapse just as fast. That's why Collins' steady approach matters so much. He's not feeding into extremes, not crowning anyone early, and not dismissing anyone either. He's keeping it grounded. And in a situation like this, that's probably the most accurate read you can get. The bigger concern, though, is still that growing gap between perception and reality. If the public narrative keeps leaning one way, but the actual competition stays wide open, it creates confusion not just for fans, but potentially for the team as well. And in a league like the NFL, clarity at quarterback is everything. That's why the next phase is going to be so important. Once training camp kicks in, there's no hiding behind controlled environments or limited reps anymore. Every throw gets evaluated, every mistake stands out, and every strong performance starts to carry real weight. This is where reputations can either be confirmed or completely rewritten.
You can't eliminate turnovers because he's going to happen. If he cuts them down and gets rid of some of those "what the heck are you doing" throws, absolutely he could be a top 20 quarterback in this league.
Tyvus, you mentioned it. It's still an if. We don't know if he's even going to be the starter. But you're a guy that's been in OTAs. You're a guy that knows this team. Once they get started in a couple weeks, what is the importance of this time for Shedeur and taking that next step, whether he's going to end up a top 20 quarterback or a backup on this team or somewhere outside of those two things?
I think that first of all, it's a new playbook, so you gotta get that going. And I think that, for all the media guys that will be out there, you've been doing this No.
Yes.
The true media guys that will be out there assessing practice. You have to understand that the defense always dominates early on. When you got a new offense and you're installing a new offense, it always starts off slow. So the defense is going to look dominant.
For Watson, this is the moment to take control and prove that the early talk wasn't just noise. If he comes out sharp, consistent, and confident, he can shut down the doubts quickly. But if there's hesitation, inconsistency, or missed opportunities, the door stays wide open. And that's all Sanders needs. Because Sanders doesn't need perfection right now. He just needs progress. He needs to keep stacking solid performances, showing command and proving he belongs in that starting conversation. And if he continues trending upward the way he has been, that slight edge fans are starting to feel could turn into something much bigger. And through all of this, Collins' voice keeps echoing in the background. Calm, simple, but powerful. No leader has been named, no outcome has been decided, and no shortcut is being handed out. That message cuts through all the noise and brings the focus back where it belongs. On competition. Now, here's where things could really start to turn. Because once real decisions get closer, everything Malik Collins hinted at becomes even more important. His message wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Nobody in that locker room is acting like this job belongs to one guy. And when players feel that way, it means the competition is still alive, no matter what's being said outside. The pressure is building fast on Deshaun Watson. And it's not just about performance anymore. It's about proving that the trust being placed in him, whether from media or expectations, is actually deserved. When your name keeps getting pushed as the frontrunner, every single rep becomes a statement. If he dominates, the narrative looks justified. But if he doesn't clearly separate, those same headlines start to feel forced. At the same time, Shedeur Sanders is sitting in the perfect position to capitalize.
Because although they have a new DC, it's very reactionary. Offense is all about timing, and that timing and that chemistry is still trying to get going. You know, you got guys that didn't come to the voluntary minicamp, so it's not going to look pretty right away for the offense. So I'm not going to judge it off of the first couple of days. Once you get about a week or so in, usually they pick up that timing. For him, he has to be able to get that playbook down, be able to take the layups. You got to show the coach that I will take the layups if I need to necessarily. I know that's what you want me to do. If it's 3rd and 5 and we need 4, I'm going to take the 5 to see another down. You know, that's what you have to do. And then every now and again, the fans and the team want to be able to.
He's building momentum without the same level of pressure, and that gives him room to grow fast. Fans are already leaning his way, and that support only gets louder every time he shows flashes of confidence and control. It's not overwhelming hype yet, but it's definitely trending upward. And this is exactly the kind of situation where locker room awareness becomes huge. Players see who's performing, who's improving, and who's earning respect in real time. Collins didn't spell it out, but his tone suggests that nobody inside is blindly following a storyline. They're watching the work, not the headlines. That's a big deal, because respect inside the team can shape how everything unfolds moving forward. Now imagine what happens if that internal belief starts shifting towards Sanders. If teammates begin to feel like he's giving them the best chance to win, that energy can spread quickly. It changes how players respond, how they rally, and how the entire offense starts to take shape. And once that kind of momentum builds, it becomes very hard to ignore, even from the top. That's where questions about decision-making start creeping in. If the competition stays close, but one name keeps getting pushed harder than the other, people are going to notice. Fans will question it, analysts will debate it, and players might even feel it. Collins' comments don't accuse anyone, but they do open the door to those conversations. And that alone adds tension. Everything now is pointing toward training camp as the breaking point. This is where talk fades and reality takes over. Real reps, real pressure, real consequences. No more controlled environments, no more soft evaluations, just performance. Whoever steps up here takes control of the narrative for real. For Watson, this is the moment to silence everything and remind people why he's in this position. Strong, consistent play can shut down all the noise instantly. But anything less than that keeps the door wide open. And that's all it takes in a battle like this. For Sanders, it's about continuing the climb. He doesn't need to do anything dramatic, just keep showing growth, confidence, and command of the offense.
make defenses defend the entire field. And I think for so long it's been, let's pack the box to stop Nick Chubb. Last year it was, let's stop Harold Fanning and let's flat foot at 10 because nobody's going to throw the ball past 10 yards. To where you get to the Raiders game, why is Isaiah Bond wide open? Well, heck, nobody's thrown a deep ball this entire year, so nobody thought that he was going to run that, and boom, it's an explosive play. So you still want to see those explosive plays in the passing game, but for him, he's got to show people that I will take the layup, because if it's right there, it's the simple and easy throw to move the chains.
Tyvis, if Deshaun Watson's the starter, and it's not Shedeur from day one, what happens to Shedeur? I mean, do you think that? I mean, I assume he'll still be here. I don't think they're going to get rid of him or trade him or anything like that. How long do you play Watson until you? I mean, is it wins and losses? Do you look at performance? Like, I think Shedeur is going to start some games this year for sure, even if he's not the starter week one.
If he keeps stacking those moments, that slight edge fans are starting to notice could become impossible to ignore. And through all of it, Collins' message keeps cutting through the chaos. No decision has been made, no favorite has been locked in, and no outcome is guaranteed. That simple truth is what makes this entire situation so unpredictable right now. At this point, it's not even just about who wins the job. It's about who the team actually believes in when everything is on the line. And that's exactly why Malik Collins speaking up matters so much right now. He didn't create drama. He exposed how much uncertainty still exists behind the scenes, and that changes how this entire situation should be viewed. Because if there really was a clear leader, you would feel it. The locker room energy would reflect it. Teammates would subtly back it. And voices like Collins wouldn't be emphasizing both guys still have something to prove. That line says everything. It tells you this competition is still being judged in real time, not decided ahead of schedule. And yet the outside noise keeps trying to lock things in for Deshaun Watson. That's where the tension keeps building. When perception moves faster than reality, it creates pressure not just on the player, but on the entire decision-making process. Because now, if Watson doesn't clearly stand out, it raises a bigger question. Why was he being pushed as the leader so early in the first place? Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders keeps benefiting from that gap. He's not being forced into a label. He's earning attention step by step. And fans are responding to that in a big way. There's something about seeing a player rise naturally that connects differently, especially when expectations weren't locked in from day one. That's why you're starting to hear more and more support swing towards Sanders. It's not just hype for the sake of hype. It's based on the idea that he might actually give the team a different kind of energy, a new direction, a fresh identity, and maybe even a better fit, depending on how things develop. It's still early, but that belief is growing louder every day, and this is where everything could come to a head. Because if training camp performances match what fans are starting to feel, the pressure to make a fair decision becomes unavoidable. You can't ignore production, you can't ignore momentum, and you definitely can't ignore the locker room if players start leaning one way. Collins' comments quietly reinforce that idea. He didn't hint at favoritism, didn't suggest anything was already decided, and didn't shut down either quarterback. That balance is important because it shows the team is still watching, still evaluating, and still expecting someone to truly earn that spot. But the longer the mixed signals continue, the bigger the spotlight gets. Fans are already questioning the narrative, analysts are starting to pick it apart, and every new update adds another layer of intrigue. This is no longer a simple QB battle. It's becoming a storyline about credibility, fairness, and who really controls the direction of the team. And the truth is, nobody can fake it once the real competition begins. Pads on, full speed reps, real defensive pressure. That's where everything gets exposed. That's where Watson either confirms the expectations or struggles to meet them. That's where Sanders either proves the hype is real or gets pulled back into the pack. Right now, the only thing that feels certain is that this situation is far from settled. Collins made that clear without needing to say too much, and that's what makes his voice stand out. While everyone else is arguing over who's ahead, he's reminding everyone that the race hasn't even reached its most important stage yet. So now it all comes down to this. Everything Malik Collins hinted at is about to be tested for real. No more guessing, no more media spin, just straight competition. And if his message was right, then this quarterback battle is nowhere near decided. No matter how many headlines try to say otherwise, the spotlight is only getting bigger from here. Deshaun Watson has to prove he's truly that guy when it counts, not just in talk, but in real performance. At the same time, Shedeur Sanders has a real shot to keep building momentum and possibly flip this entire situation. Fans are already feeling that shift, and if it keeps growing, Things could get very interesting very fast. And that's what makes this so crazy right now. You've got media pushing one story, players hinting at another, and fans starting to lean toward a completely different outcome. That kind of tension doesn't just disappear, Warsaw. It builds, it explodes, and it forces answers. But here's the real question. When the moment comes, who actually earns that QB1 spot? Who steps up when the pressure hits, when every rep matters, and when the locker room is watching closely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who you got right now, Watson or Sanders? And don't just say a name, explain why. If you're locked in on this battle and want every update as it unfolds, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. This situation is heating up, and you already know it's only going to get louder from here.